From our side of the house, we don't believe that gender identity is fixed to start off with. No one is born with feminine qualities. No one is born with masculinity or femininity, right? You're either raised to be feminine or you're either raised to be masculine, and the social expectations that exist in society turn you to a certain way. We believe that from our side, from their side of the house, it's like really horrible to separate the feminine qualities with the qualities of a person. We think that the artificial distinction is something we do not accept. We think that the ability to feel pain, to cry if you're thinking that it's something hurtful, your case about the Prime Minister crying during the Thailand disasters. In these instances as well, we think that's also a quality as a person that that person has, and not necessarily only a feminine quality that only women have to start off with. Moreover, they said that professional quality is questioned. Firstly, the reason why they're even broadcasted in the media is because they're probably successful and get the attention of society to the extent the media are willing to broadcast them. And moreover, therefore, I think it's reasonable to assume they have quality. And secondly, in a context where there is already inequality regarding the male and the female and the imbalance of masculinity over femininity, we think it's rather helpful that femininity is also pushed up to the extent to make it equal. Moreover, they said that women are forced by the social norms, and that's a problem. Well, from our side of the house, we're going to prove to you that our paradigm can achieve a better end in the long run to lessen the expectations of society, and if we prove to do so, then we should win this debate. No, thank you. So we need to understand the question of this debate. The question is this: what's better for the women, either to exist in a paradigm where masculinity is celebrated, where confidence is associated with being masculine in that paradigm, or whether we live under our paradigm where both qualities are celebrated, to be able to nurture people, to be able to support people, to be caring, traditional features which are linked to be feminine. We think that those things are also something that needs to be celebrated as well. We think that by being able to celebrate the feminine features and being able to link those features with being successful, we think that link in itself is something important. In the status quo, we think when we see male CEOs, we think of them as being dominative, aggressive, assertive, and that's probably how they got to that position. However, by being able to also broadcast female CEOs and show their qualities of being able to nurture people, to care for people, to support people, then we think it expands the norm of what it actually means to be a CEO in the first place. We think that it opens up the possibility of being a CEO to these feminine female people as well. We think that in the context right now, the status quo, the option is only open to the women who are willing to become masculine, who are willing to show these masculine qualities, and we think that's a paradigm we do not like. Our paradigm is the one which celebrates both features and does not separate artificially the differences of the quality of that person and the quality because she's a girl. Moreover, we think that there are qualities from that one person, and that's the paradigm we support. No, thank you. Moreover, we need to understand the status quo. By accepting that the male paradigm is the one in the status quo, something which the Prime Minister also agrees to, it's also implicitly implying that in order to succeed in our society, you need to be masculine. You need to have masculine qualities as well. You need to also be able to dominate, to be aggressive, to be assertive. We think that's horrible. We think that creates a situation where women can only be successful only if they are willing to conform to the masculine paradigm that exists, and only if they're willing to imitate the masculine qualities of these people. That's something we hate from our side of the house. It also implicitly implies, because of this existence of the paradigm, that being masculine is better than being feminine, and that if you're a male, you're superior because of that paradigm that actually exists. That's something we would like to reject from our side of the house. In that context, the problem is this: the women are alienated in the first place because women who aspire to be successful need to be masculine. But there are women who do not have that quality to even be masculine, however they have that quality to be feminine, to be traditionally feminine, to be supportive, to be caring. We think from our side of the house, if we can show that there are people who have become successful using these feminine features, these traditional feminine features, then we think that's only a good thing for society. We reject the idea that masculinity is the normative stereotype in our society, and that's what's needed to be successful. We hate that. Motoki.
Given that society wants people to be masculine, you're continuously portraying women to have feminine quality, which board directors don't want to begin with. How would your side actually make women able to access these positions to begin with?
We don't think society wants women to be masculine. We don't think society exists in a way that changes women to get more power, to be more dominative, to be more assertive, to be more aggressive. That's why from our side of the house, when you look at the example of people like Margaret Thatcher, who was called the Iron Lady, she is not accessible to the normal women, the female people on the ground. She is seen as an exception, and that's something we reject from our side of the house. Moreover, why is the media so uniquely important? We need to understand that the media is the only way that exists for the people to come to know these people, to come to understand these people. These successful people normally live within themselves. They have their rich, cluster of houses where they keep themselves to, and you as a normal person wouldn't necessarily be in touch with them, and there is no other way for you to actually know who that person is or the qualities that person actually possesses. Media is the only medium that actually gives about the information to these people, about the that emphasizes the goodness of these people and the qualities that she has, and that's something we think why the media is uniquely important. It's the only avenue that can push through the qualities of these women. We don't think that this is necessarily belittling this woman by only focusing on these features, because the only way that you can think that this action is actually belittling these people is only if you think that these abilities are inferior to the masculine paradigm. We do not think so, and that's something we reject from our side of the house. Moreover, over time, because these features of traditional women are associated with being successful, I think it creates a situation where these features get pushed upon much, much more. Now finally, we think that traditionally, femininity is something which is linked to being at home. Masculinity is I'm still at 6 minutes 30. Masculinity is something which is linked with being at work. That's the difference we need to recognize. From our side of the house, even if we are talking about things like fashion choices, even if you are talking about the uses of your feminine features of your body, we think that by pushing those feminine qualities, it no longer labels these people because they have a feminine quality, it no longer buys them up as only being housewives, or it no longer creates a situation where they are seen only as housewives. It creates a situation where the girls who are raised to be feminine, it offers them a greater range of opportunities. It makes them more able to feel comfortable in pursuing their careers. Finally, I am at 7 minutes 20, and at the end of the day, at the end of my speech, I believe that we, from our side of the house, by associating the success with feminine features, it only brings about, only lessens that social norm that exists, and for these reasons, we're very, very proud to oppose.
Thank the Leader of Opposition for a speech. I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to give a speech in 7 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm bad at microphone, sorry. Mr. Speaker, what they're proposing is that ultimately women should act feminine, and therefore, that's something that they should be proud of. We think that's good, but to be honest, though, not every woman in society are that feminine, right? They did say it's a social construct, true, but certain women may or may not want to choose to subscribe to what we commonly understand as a masculine quality, for instance. What we think their stand leads to is that ultimately it re-emphasizes that for women to be successful, assuming they even can under their paradigm, you must possess some kind of feminine quality, which we think that's pretty much, kind of sexist. Anyways, okay, let me first, the extension I'll bring to you is to actually analyze the masculinity-femininity dichotomy that we live in, right? How can you actually break this down? How can you actually, destroy the social construct expectation that is given to all people of genders, of different genders, different sexes, etc., etc. For that, responses, right? Let's talk broadly about masculinity and femininity and stuff like that. Look, guys, the purpose of this debate, or our stance, is not to say, women must always be masculine. But we think the idea is to show to society that women are not always feminine at the end of the day, right? This is an analysis that Pong brought to you. That when women are being portrayed in media as having the feminine moment, by the way, feminine isn't like, only caring in the context of your company, right? It's more emotional breakdown, for instance, that happened with Prime Minister Luxmiwattana. Or in case of Aung San Suu Kyi, the way media is portraying is that she's a wife whose husband has died, but she's continuously fighting, etc., etc. Point is this, ladies and gentlemen: the femininity in society, thank you, is not portrayed in the way that they claim. They're not portrayed as because these female CEOs are caring, therefore they're successful. They're saying that this successful women also have some kind of feminine quality. For instance, that she likes cooking, she likes shopping, she breaks down from time to time and makes it relatable. I don't know. Point is that when you are doing this kind of portrayal, it makes men and perhaps certain amount of women too ultimately have the reconfirmation that in the end, no matter how successful you are, women must be feminine, and we think that's something extremely bad. In order to counter that kind of preconceived bias, ladies and gentlemen, we need to also show, perhaps also actively, that women are capable of continuously being masculine, if that categorization even exists, or being assertive. We think if women want to be assertive, that's something we think is something very important to portray. Especially when we're talking about successful women, right? Because we're talking about real society here. In a real society where there's a lot of corporations who already believe, the board director believe that a successful CEO must be assertive. The point is that women who are successful in this particular context mean that they're also very assertive and they're very capable of managing stuff, even though there's high tension and stuff like that. We think that's something that should be celebrated, not overshadowed by showing the femininity side of these people. Okay. So yeah, because ultimately we think this policy, their stance ultimately destroys the whole kind of diversity of women, right? The women are not only feminine at the end of the day, but they have multiple different things. Because this motion isn't entirely about what we want to think about women, but how can we actually change the perception towards women within the society. That's why we're debating our media. And the characterization of people in public is that they already have this preconceived notion or conclusion that perhaps women, thank you, are always feminine. And whenever they see some glimpse that proves that kind of logic, they just go, oh hey, because of this CEO, she likes cooking, therefore every woman must be women. Every woman must be feminine, and therefore they probably should not be CEOs at all. Consider they will break down, companies will be screwed. We think that's something horrible. Go.
Given that the dominant norm is that successful people are masculine, under your paradigm, how will you ever link feminine qualities to success, and how will you ever open up opportunity to feminine women?
We don't necessarily think that that's the superbly necessary thing at the end of the day, because look, guys, perhaps femininity and masculinity go together in the management process, because ultimately that is necessary. But here's the logic, Mr. Speaker. If you continuously show this feminine side, what's going to happen is the confirmation bias we talked about. True enough, feminine quality should also be given up, should also be promoted as well. But at the same time, if you start discarding the entire masculinity or the more assertiveness of certain women, we don't think assertiveness should be only associated with masculinity anyways. Point being, the social dynamic when there's a pervasive norm that women cannot be assertive at all, we think what's necessary to make sure that the maximum amount of women can become more successful is to show that perhaps women can also be masculine, also be feminine at the same time. We argue if you emphasize on the feminine quality, what's going to happen is the confirmation of the bias, and that leads to entrenchment of gender norm. No, thank you. Let's think about the masculine and feminine dichotomy this in society, right? The whole feminine nature thing. Because ultimately, in the men-women dichotomy that exists, ultimately their qualities, people assume that there are certain qualities that is feminine, i.e. caring, etc., that makes people incapable. When we think these are not necessarily, these shouldn't be categorized as masculine and feminine to begin with. Point is, Mr. Speaker, that when we are able to show that women can be both masculine and feminine at the same time, those kind of qualities ceases to become a masculine and feminine qualities. Those qualities become perhaps a really, really capable CEO's quality, not being entrenched in the masculinity and feminine, right? When you are continually saying that femininity is something that should be promoted in the more of places, that's basically you are reconfirming that certain women can only be feminine, and because certain women can only be feminine, therefore, we need to change society so that we can accommodate to them. The harm of having that kind of stance is that it entrenches this view that certain assertiveness is only inherently in line with men, and certain caring and social kind of things are only inherently linked to women. When the fact of the matter in society is that men can be both as well, and women can be both as well, right? If you are continuously emphasizing emphasizing that femininity must be the way to go for CEOs. You're essentially saying that all women must be feminine so that we can be successful in society. We think that's bad because that is another pervasive gender norm that forces certain people to act in a particular certain way in order to become successful. It's equally bad as the entrenched masculinity. We think the remedy to this kind of situation ultimately is to portray that certain kind of women who are successful have the assertiveness and also has the femininity, so that people don't continuously view them as being, extremely masculine. That's why they're good. The conclusion of this speech is basically this: that regardless of who we are born as, whatever gender, whatever sex you're born as, these qualities of what we call masculinity, i.e. assertiveness, aggressiveness, or willing to take risks, the certain quality we call femininity, which is caring, or which is being very sensitive, for instance, are not something that we should be calling masculine and feminine. The moment you continuously emphasize the idea of femininity being good for management, you are entrenching that gender norm, and therefore certain women won't be able to self-actualize. That's something extremely bad in their case. Therefore, we must oppose this portrayal.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for his speech. I call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition to give a speech in 7 minutes. Hear, hear.